Baca. Yeah, I've lost to Wisconsin now 10 straight times. That's what I am. Yeah, it's a good weekend, Christian. A lot of games that were pretty close this weekend. A couple upsets. The dogs, though. Speaking of the dogs, though, bro, I called it. Told you they were going to roll yesterday. I have a question for you, though. Is there really something going on with you letting the other team score in the first drive right away every week, and then you guys kind of make it feel good for a couple minutes, and then just shove it down their throat the rest of the game? Because that's what it looks like.
I would say yeah. I mean, I think there's something to it. You remember when Nebraska went on that streak for a while there, where they let the other they would have like some boneheaded turnover like within the first 20 seconds of the game,
Yes,
but they'd win. I think Georgia's got like a weird little streak like that right now going on themselves. Just let the other team score, real quick, get down 7-0, and yeah.
I mean, I'm not kidding. Is this like the fifth straight week this has happened with you guys? I mean, it's like I put a lot of money on Georgia yesterday, obviously, but like I couldn't believe it was like the first play of the game, and I'm like, Georgia, Florida did it. I know against you guys, Auburn did it. I was like, God damn,
Vandy did it.
Vandy did it. It's crazy to me. Missouri, I think, scored first too.
Yeah, I think there's something to it, dude. I mean, it's like honestly, I think Georgia is just bored, and so they're just letting these teams do it.
That's so weird, man. It's almost like worse that you let a team score like that than Tennessee didn't do a thing the rest of the game. It's like that's just how good Georgia is this year. It's crazy to me. But moving on though, I see Seth here says, "Hope you guys can beat Iowa and get a bowl game." Yeah, me too. Me too. We'll talk about the Huskers here in a minute. Christian, I'll save it for the segment on that.
It'll take us a little bit, but we'll get down there, Chris. Sure enough, and we'll get to them. We touched on the Georgia game, Carson Beck. Man, I mean, you want to talk about a guy that's wheeling and dealing right now at the right time of the year. Georgia's offense is just humming along, dude.
Yeah, they've gotten better each and every week. He hasn't had one bad game this year, in my opinion. You don't have some quarterbacks like we've seen it with Penix. We've seen it. Bo Nix has been really consistent this year, but we've seen it with, even Caleb Williams against Notre Dame, the turnover. Man, I haven't seen Carson Beck play one bad game. That guy has been the epitome of consistency this whole entire season. I think he threw for another 300 yards again for fifth or sixth straight time this year. Georgia's offense is really good. I tell you what, Christian, right now, in my opinion, again, for the second straight week, I'm going to say it. I think Georgia's the best team in the country right now.
I'd have to agree with you. At this moment, right? I mean, things changed on a drop of a dime. I mean, you're getting back Brock Bowers at a pivotal time. They're trying to get him worked back into the game plan, get him some touches, but also keep him healthy. The defense, I think, is playing really well too. Georgia's just clicking right now on all cylinders. I mean, and in a weird way, like you see teams that get injured and that have guys that aren't playing well, and it just falls apart. The thing with Georgia is, it's like when Brock Bowers got hurt, they started leaning on other guys. They started getting them more touches. I think that helped them out a lot.
I agree.
Not that you want to see injuries or anything like that. Same thing on this defensive side, right? When Dumas Johnson, I think, broke his arm, I mean, they had to figure something out back there at the linebacker position, and they're getting these younger guys experience. They're getting more reps, and the scary part of it is, regardless of whether Georgia wins it this year, I think Carson Beck comes back next year.
That's an interesting take. I actually was going to text you that yesterday. I was like, man, what would happen if he would come back another year? Because Georgia is relatively young this season. This was kind of supposed to be a rebuilding year for you guys, right? And yeah. I think I remember you called me a couple weeks, or it was about a month ago when Bowers got hurt, and you were pretty worried, and I think most of the Georgia fan base was. But I said, man, this is a perfect opportunity for the rest of those guys on your team step up, man, and they have. And man, I think it made you guys even better. I truly believe that. I mean, don't get me wrong, Brock Bowers is a stud. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But in a way, it might have been a good thing. I know that sounds crazy, and I don't want to see anybody get hurt. But man, dude, you guys look. I mean, Carson Beck spreads the ball out too. I love that. He doesn't just go to one or two guys. It's everybody, anybody, backup tight end. I mean, it don't matter. Next man up for Georgia, dude, and it's they're fun to watch, dude. They look great. I wish I could say something bad about them for your sake, but I can't. So they just keep winning and keep rolling. And that Alabama game is going to be interesting here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we've got Georgia Tech next week, so that's going to be a hell of a matchup. I think that's to me, and that could potentially be a trap game. We'll see what happens. Obviously, I don't want to take anybody lightly here, but we'll see what happens. You're absolutely right, Chris. That Alabama game is going to be that's a damn good game, I feel like.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. It's the last team to beat you guys.
I agree. Seth says Heisman top 4 should be Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, Penix, and Beck. I agree with that.
I agree. I think you got to take Marvin Harrison, just send him down there, though, just the season that he's had. Obviously, you don't have the stats to win it this year. You got to have crazy elite stats to make it as a wide receiver. But I agree with that, Seth. I like Jaden Daniels right now. I do. I know that sounds crazy. They got 3 losses, but his numbers are just insane this year, Christian. I mean, it's nuts. Not only through the air, on the ground. He's over 1,000 yards rushing as well.
Oh, 100% agree with you. 100%. Speaking of Marvin Harrison, Ohio State, Minnesota. Ohio State took care of Minnesota yesterday. It was kind of a close game there for a little bit, right, in the first half?
I think I didn't watch this one. I know at one point it was like 14-3, but Ohio State's defense. I keep saying this, man. I know I harp on the Ohio State man and lack of defense with Ryan Day over the years. Their defense is really, really good this year. Nobody's been able to really put many points on them. We obviously got a game this week that'll determine the Big Ten, but that's going to be a good one between two really very, very similar teams.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. I mean, basically, the Michigan game, we touched on it. We said that was going to be close for like 3 quarters, and Maryland had a shot to win that game down the stretch. Obviously, couldn't take care of business in that regard. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Going into this game, it feels like Ohio State has all the momentum right now, and Michigan is surviving. Now, obviously, we know Michigan's schedule was very backloaded this year, and they've started to play some of those better teams, but. Yeah, I mean, this game could not be any more bigger. I don't think, Chris.
No, I agree with you. I watched this whole game yesterday as I took Maryland in the points, and they were getting 20. Maryland actually, I don't know what Tulea was doing at the end of the game. He threw 2 interceptions in the fourth quarter. Maryland actually moved the ball on Michigan yesterday. I mean, and I don't want to say at ease, but we're moving the ball. I was leaning Michigan into this game before this weekend against Ohio State. I'm about even now, man. I don't know. I mean, we do a preview show this week, but goddamn, Christian, this should be a good one. You said it best. This could be a really, really good game with a lot of implications on the line.
Yeah. I agree with you, man. I can't wait to do the preview. We're going to switch it up a little bit, but I can't wait to do the preview show and kind of touch a little more on that. North Alabama, Florida State for about a quarter there. That was one of the more interesting games that we were watching yesterday.
Yeah. You guys obviously seen it. Christian talked to me about it, and then I went and rewatched it. What happened to Jordan Travis, dude? My heart breaks for that kid, man. I'm really high on Florida State this year. I had him going 13-0 to the playoffs, and they might still make the playoff, but boy, he was having a really good season. I don't think he had Heisman numbers necessarily this year, but holy shit, dude, what happened? I'm sure you guys saw it. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but you just hate to see that type of injury. There's you never want to see anybody get hurt, but when, somebody twists an ankle, rolls an ankle, but this was like an Alex Smith type of deal here. You could tell that he's going to be done for a while. It's just sad to see.
Anytime they get that cart to come out there, it's never like, oh, we'll be back next week. When the cart comes out, you're gonna be missing some time. And so I Mike and Seth both said it. I feel terrible, and Chris said it as well. I feel terrible for the kid. Not just the fact that, hey, it really couldn't have happened at a worse time, but I also think the fact that just this was their season. They just needed to stay healthy, and they were kind of getting healthy again with their receivers getting ready to kind of come back with all that stuff. But man, my heart breaks for them. Obviously, they've got Florida coming up this week, so it'll be interesting to see, man. It's going to be a battle of backup quarterbacks there.
Yeah. No, you said it best. We'll move on here, Christian. A game that was a wet, rainy, cold game in Corvallis last night. I was watching the Nebraska game while this one was going on pretty closely. If you guys don't follow me in my bets, you should. I took Washington. I think the whole entire country, Christian took Washington as well, but the whole entire country was on Oregon State last night. Weird game, wet, rainy game. Penix looked good first half, second half. Oregon State's defense stepped up, but Washington actually stepped up in the last drive, got him out with got off the field on a 4th down, and then Penix made a huge, I think it was a 3rd down throw, and they just kneeled the ball the last minute and a half for that game. But it was ugly. Defensive game for the most part. But big win by Washington to go in there, man. Corvallis last night. It was kind of a fun game to watch, Christian, with the weather. It was raining, super windy, cold. It just kind of an old school type of game. But hats off to Washington. You said it best this the last couple of weeks with Washington, Christian. They keep finding ways to win. It might not be pretty, but they found themselves in the top 4. And I think they're going to have a date with the next team we'll be talking about here shortly.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. Oregon taking care of business against Arizona State, put the clamps on them. Yeah, I mean, that's about all you can say. Oregon's just taking care of business, and they're looking good down the stretch here, Chris.
Yeah, no, I agree, Christian. I would say Oregon and Georgia are the 2 best teams in the country right now, from what I've seen eye test wise. I mean, Oregon's just been blowing everybody out, playing good defense since that loss to Washington a month and a half ago. And I think we're going to get what we all want again, is that Pac-12 title game.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, sir. Speaking of doing well, we can talk about Bama here. They beat the brakes off Chattanooga, doing what they were supposed to do in that game. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the Iron Bowl next week and how all that shakes out. Looking at Texas, Iowa State. Texas survived. They beat Iowa State there. What was your thoughts on the Texas game, Chris? A little bit there.
I bet Texas in one of my parlays, and that game was 6-3 at halftime. And Iowa State's been known all year for great defense. Texas lost their running back the week before, so kind of feeling this game was going to be close. A lot of people thought this was an upset alert. Quinn Ewers played a little bit better in the second half, though. He looked a little rusty, though. He honestly did. Texas didn't look like they were firing on all cylinders, but they had enough to get it done here, in the fourth quarter, Christian. But hats off. Iowa State is a very slept-on team this year. I know they started the season off kind of rough, but I believe they got 6 or 7 wins, which is a team that I didn't think was going to be very good this year under Matt Campbell. I beg to differ. They're actually a pretty good football team this year, Christian. And you know as well as I do what happens in the Big 12 every year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it's just chaos, pandemonium right now. There's a 3-way tie for second, and we're going to see who ends up wanting to take that thing. I feel like every week it changed, and so it'll be interesting to see who actually gets in there to probably play. I think Texas has it wrapped at this point.
Yes.
But who's going to play them, that's going to be the better question. Speaking of it being wrapped, the Florida-Mizzou game, that was one for the ages. Of course, it was a great game to watch. I know you were watching some other games around that point.
Yeah, I'll probably kick it to you. I was watching the score. I knew it was close, kind of back and forth most of the game. I could let you talk about it. Looks like Seth in here watched it too. I wish I could have watched a little bit more of this, but I only have so many monitors.
Yeah, I watched it. Florida was up 31, I think, to 30. They kicked that go-ahead field goal there, and with about a minute 30 left, I think the running back Etienne got pushed out of bounds, and so Mizzou got the ball back with about a minute and a half left. They drove down the field, kicked the field goal with about 8 seconds left, and then pretty much put the clamps on them. And the funniest part about it was they were just running on the field, doing the chop, everything. The kicker did the chop after he made the field goal. There was still 7 seconds left to go in the game, and you're like, well, calm down here. But Mizzou took care of business, man. And this one, to me, I feel like if you're a Florida fan, it gives you a lot of hope, obviously, with Mertz getting injured. And then you've got Noah Brown. Shout out to Graham Mertz. Hopefully he gets back into it here. But, I feel like watching this Mizzou-Florida game, Chris, the one thing I can say is Missouri, they're a damn good team. With Drinkowitz over there, they've got a good program. They're going to be a tough out. Florida needs to figure something out. I mean, again, the good news is that they're playing Florida State at the Swamp next week, and it's going to be a battle of backup quarterbacks, so we'll see how all that shakes out.
Yeah, no, I don't have a ton to add to that as you got to watch the end of that. I did not. Like I said, I was seeing the score. I didn't really know what happened, and then we talked about it before we got on here a little bit about what happened. But, yeah, Missouri, man, they're right up there with Louisville. Most impressive team this year out of nowhere. I didn't expect Mizzou to play this way. I thought they would win yesterday. They did get it done against Florida. Thought it was going to be a close game, though. So, I don't have much to add to that one. But, yeah, Florida next week, maybe got a shot against Florida State at the Swamp. I'll give them that.
Oh, and that was the other thing, too, I forgot to mention. Florida had them a 4th and 17.
Oh, God.
Mizzou on that final drive. And somehow they let them convert to your boy, old Luther Burden. They picked it up.
Yeah.
And they were at like their own 30-yard line, too. So It wasn't like, yeah. So that's how that game ended up going. So
Wow. Yeah. Heartbreak for Florida, not for me. 5-win season this year. They're probably not going bowling, in my opinion.
Louisville, Miami. That was a damn good game.
Whew. That was a good game. I want to add, I watched this thing, the whole game, and Miami, man, I don't know. We said it yesterday morning. This team is they played at the level of the competition. If they're playing a team with 2 wins, they'll fuck around and get beat. They play a team like Louisville, who was 9-1 going into that game. They played their ass off. Tyler Van Dyke looked a lot better, but Miami Louisville, this game to me, Miami should have won this game, in my opinion. You saw the last play of the game. Miami throws a Hail Mary. Ball's tipped, bobbled. Kid catches it at the 2-yard line for Miami, and he couldn't get in or whatever, man. But it was you said it best. This was a really good football game. Hats off to Louisville, though, man. What, 10-1? Wow.
10-1 with a first-year coach.
That's crazy. That's a crazy season this year. And then their only loss was to a 3-win Pitt team.
I know. It just made it like they couple decisions. That you take that Pitt game out because they kind of did get smoked in that game. But take that Pitt game out. Let's say they don't play bad. They could be undefeated. I still think Brom should win. A lot of the Coach of the Year awards there. Just in my opinion, as he should. So. Rutgers. Actually, I want to say this, Chris. I want to keep it parked here for a second. Yeah. Louisville now. Does this give the Jordan Travis injury? Does this give you pause here for Louisville in that game? Maybe to say, hey, they might have a shot to beat them.
I really do. I'm glad you said that, because when we were talking about Florida State, I was thinking, man, that Louisville game now becomes very, very interesting. I mean, don't get me wrong. Florida State still has a shot. Florida State has more talent than Louisville across the board as far as talent goes. But, man, Jordan Travis is such a big part of that Florida State team. Now, any quarterback is. I mean, we can all make the case for any quarterback for any team. But Jordan Travis has been there a while. He's got Johnny Wilson. He's got Keon Coleman, those receivers. I don't know how good his backup is. I really don't know much about the kid. But Louisville now, to me, if I had to pick this game right now, I would probably lean Louisville, Christian. I really would. And I honestly say that's because Jordan Travis is not playing quarterback for Florida State.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. I think Louisville definitely has a shot. They're going to play Kentucky here to end the season off. Not going to be an easy game by any stretch, but we'll see what happens here.
Yeah. Yep, I agree.
Ole Miss and Penn State both took care of business at home against Louisiana Monroe and Rutgers, respectfully. Hats off to them for doing their thing as they're going to finish the year off, and possible top 10 teams there. Oklahoma BYU was a close game for a little bit.
Yeah, somebody on this channel, picked this game to be relatively close. If I'm not mistaken, Oklahoma was a 26-point favorite this game. This game was close the entire way. You always bring up about BYU. They always play really, really, really well at home. Terrible on the road, but really good at home.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think BYU at home is always a tough. They're always tough. It's a weird environment. It's a weird thing. They're just a tough team to get out against there. And shout out to Oklahoma taking care of business there in the Big 12. Which is not always easy to do. Georgia State looked good against LSU for like a quarter, maybe.
It was 14-14 at one point.
Yeah, and then
yeah, you know what happened then.
Oh yeah, LSU. Remember they were in the SEC and should do some things.
Right. Exactly. Oh boy.
Illinois, Iowa setting football back, decades.
You probably watched more of this game than I did. I watched the whole second half. Obviously, I was rooting for Illinois. Illinois had chances in this game, though. Go ahead, Christian. I got more to add to this Big Ten West later.
I think Iowa, here's the thing. We bash on Iowa. We bash on these teams. Iowa, and a lot of people think, hey, Iowa's defense is the greatest thing in the world. Honestly, they think it's one of the best defenses in the country. Well, I think they're very good. I think they benefit from playing subpar teams. You want my honest opinion on it? I think that if you put Georgia, you put any team that like Ohio State, and you let them run through that schedule, I think Georgia's defense legitimately, Chris, might give up 2 touchdowns all year.
No, I agree with you. This is what I say about Nebraska too. People keep telling me they're elite. They're good, much more improved, which is great for Nebraska, but they get propped up a lot by a lot of these terrible offenses in the Big Ten West. It just is what it is. I mean, let's be honest. Penn State put 31 on Iowa. That game was 31-0 earlier this year. So, and Penn State to me doesn't have an elite offense. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Iowa's obviously playing in the Big Ten West title game. They're either playing Michigan or Ohio State. I don't think that game's even 4 touchdowns close. And I know that sounds crazy, but I really, truly don't.
Seth said it best. I mean, Penn State put up 30 on them. Exactly right. Here's the thing. Illinois had Illinois, it was like 13-9 for a majority of this game, I think it was.
Yeah.
10-9, I think, at halftime.
It was 2-3
Illinois,
at one point.
Jeez, dude, this is... I had to check, make sure I wasn't watching baseball at a certain point, you know? Let's see. But I think this is the other side of it, Chris, is Illinois kind of let the game go by them. Iowa scored a touchdown late. Illinois had a shot to win it. Couldn't do it. And, you feel for them, man. You feel for them. I wanted the games this week to mean something and the Big Ten East to be put into absolute pandemonium, as I'm sure as every other fan base out in the Midwest did, other than Iowa, but hey, here we are.
Yeah.
So Utah, Arizona, somebody on this channel picked Arizona and somebody else picked Utah, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I picked Utah, but I put my money where my mouth really was and bet Arizona yesterday on the money line. Won myself a couple $100. But yeah, if I could have took the time after Wednesday and switched it, I would have the more I thought about it. I think Utah's kind of just ran its course. I mean, they've had a tough slew of games lately. Arizona right now, though, if I'm not mistaken, has won 5 games in a row against ranked opponents, something like that. They have been on fire. And they scored 21 in the first quarter in this game. Hats off to Utah. They actually made it close. I don't want to say kept it close, but they hung in there for the next 3 quarters. The game was pretty close the entire time after, if you want to talk about just score-wise after the first quarter. But Arizona, man, again, they're up there with Missouri and Louisville for probably one of the most surprising teams this year. I didn't have Arizona even pegged at 4 wins this year. They got 8 now. So hats off to the Wildcats.
That was listen, Jedd Fisk. I think Jedd Fisk. That's a guy that's going to get a lot of looks probably this year. So hats off to Arizona, man.
Yeah. Wow.
North Carolina, Clemson.
Yeah, I did catch some of this game on and off yesterday. Clemson's playing football now like they should have been playing the first half of the season. They look a lot better. Their defense is starting to come around now. North Carolina is a tale of 2 teams, right? Christian starting the season off, 7-0, something like that. Dropping now 3 of the last 4, getting beat by teams that they shouldn't be getting beat by. Defense is non-existent once again this year. Yeah, North Carolina, ACC is not very good. There's a couple teams that are decent. Holy shit, the rest of them is kind of like the Big 12.
I agree, man. I mean, this is what a weird year. I think everyone would have probably put like North Carolina, Florida State. That was at one point the midpoint of the season. That was kind of what everybody thought was going to be the ACC title game. And man, how quickly that has changed. Clemson clawing back. Tyler from Spartanburg probably saved their season, I think.
He might have. They keep bringing him up on ESPN too about this, man. He must have motivated Dabo to get his shit together. And Clemson playing a lot more better football, inspired football, whatever word you want to throw in there lately. I don't know, man. North Carolina, though, on the flip side of the coin, is just a team that looks like they haven't played football now. I don't understand. Drake May only putting up 20 points in this game. It surprises the shit out of me. That's a guy that, I thought was probably going to win the Heisman this year. Now I don't even think he's getting voted in to the ceremony.
Yeah, I mean, just a weird deal there, man. I mean, it's a lot of people are saying, hey, take Drake May. Mitch Trubisky 2.0.
Oh, man, I hate to say that, but yeah, it's kind of looking that way in a way. He hasn't been looking good, dude. Neither is North Carolina as a whole. They got all those wide receivers only putting up 20 points against Clemson. They got beat by Virginia this year too. It's just not, I don't know. Something's wrong with North Carolina. I don't know what it is, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, dude. I think it's going to be, I don't know. I think it's going to be fun to see how all this shakes out. There's some Gator Swag said it best. Syracuse just fired their football coach, Dino Babers. So there's a lot of programs out here that are going to be looking for coaches and stuff and getting propped up, I got a feeling. So it'll be a weird offseason of football, Chris. A lot of moving pieces, that's for sure.
Yeah, a lot of quarter. And he should have been fired. Syracuse started off 5-0 and have lost, I think, 6 in a row now, something like that. Yeah. He was on the hot seat start season, so not a surprising fire there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's better. Here's the play devil's advocate, though. I mean, what if they start off 2-3 next year?
Syracuse fan. Is there even a Syracuse fan out there?
Donovan McNabb. I mean, you got what was it? That movie, The Express. Jim Brown, I think, played at Syracuse, and then who was it? Ernie something or other.
Yeah, Syracuse is known for basketball players like Carmelo Anthony and stuff like that. But yeah, no, Syracuse. I think it needed to happen, though, man. They're, like I said, man, they started out the last couple seasons like undefeated, kind of like what Kentucky does, and then they get in the gauntlet and they can't win a game now. It's crazy.
Kansas State, Kansas. That was a good game that Kansas ended up shitting away.
Yeah. I watched this whole thing as I bet K-State yesterday, and I'll tell you what, though, it was a fun game to watch. A lot of big plays in that game, back and forth, especially on the ground for both teams. But that game was really heated at the end. There were a couple of controversial calls, and both coaches were pretty pissed on the sideline, dropping F-bombs right and left, right in front of the ref's face. It was kind of fun to watch, actually. And I know at the end of the game, K-State's quarterback kneeled the ball, and KU player shoves him, and then they get into it. It was just, those two teams don't like each other at all, of course, in-state rivalry. But that was a fun game to watch. But hats off K-State. Both these teams, though, surprises for me this year. I didn't expect a ton out of K-State after last year's Big 12 title. They're not a bad football team. They're really not. And Kansas kind of came out of nowhere this year for me, Christian. They've upset a few teams this year. I think they got 7 wins, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. So good for them.
Yeah, and I think Kansas, was it Kansas? They said they're getting their quarterback back next year. Was it Bean? So
yes, yep, Bean, and then Daniels, not Jalen Daniels, Jade, whatever one Daniels. He's coming back.
Or is it Jalen Daniels?
It's Jalen Daniels, and then Jane Daniels is the one at LSU. You're right, but yeah, he's coming back next year. So,
and then JT Daniels. Too many Daniels, dude. Yeah, I like Jack Daniels personally.
Yeah.
But all right, looking ahead here, Oklahoma State took care of business against Houston to remain in the top 25. Good for them. Tulane's still doing what they do. I feel like every week we see they just keep winning, dude.
Yeah, their only loss was to Ole Miss in a close one this year. That was it.
The Army West Point beating Coastal Carolina.
Yes, banked it yesterday.
Michigan State won the battle for worst team in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think Allen's fired. I do. Was it Tom Allen? Is that his name at Indiana, Christian? Is that right?
Yeah. Tom Allen over there at Indiana. I got to think so too. I mean, when you're in a school, here's the thing. Sometimes when you're one of those mid-tier schools that's really good at basketball, everyone's going to be comparing you to basketball season, right? They're like, well, we can have success in basketball. Why can't we have success in football? And I think that's kind of the thing with Indiana. Now, also, to be fair with you, I think Indiana had a really good defense this year, too.
Yeah, they did. The big thing, they caught a bunch of hype right away earlier in the season because they played Ohio State. Remember that? Like week 1,
yeah.
And they Ohio State didn't have a passing touchdown. It was like 24-10 or something close for a while. Yeah, I'm with you. Speaking of Tom Allen, I think he's been there for like 9 years, too, isn't he? He's been there for a while. I know Penix played under him. I know that. I think it's probably time, though. I was kind of thinking that yesterday when I was watching a little bit of that game. I'm like, man, Indiana, I think it's just ran its course with him.
Yeah, looking at Southern Miss, that wasn't a game. Navy beat Eastern Carolina. Hey, I did say, remember, I know you thought it was crazy. Eastern Carolina Navy, that was going to be a damn good game, and it set football back again.
Yeah, looking back at the 1900s when Navy was actually good. So, perfect.
The Pirates, as they are known in Eastern Carolina, Purple Pirates. It's not really their mascot, but hey, man, if not by land, I guess it's by sea.
Yes, correct.
Purdue Northwestern. Dude, what can you say about Northwestern? Get another dub there.
Yeah, I banked them yesterday, too. They were getting some points. I thought Northwestern was the better team, especially at home. Purdue's just not very good. Northwestern, I don't know who their coach is. Their intern, who's the guy filling in. They need to hire him, dude. He's done a hell of a job.
They did.
Okay, they did. Okay. I was a little behind on that. Awesome. He's done a great job this year with them, dude. I think a lot of people thought Northwestern last year only had one win. It was against my lowly Nebraska Cornhuskers last year. A lot of people expected not much after Fitzgerald was fired, and this kid's done a good job, man. I like I said, I think Northwestern's got 6 wins. I think they're bowl eligible, if I'm not mistaken.
At six wins, yeah, Chris. Okay. Here's the thing. I know you're exactly right. We covered them right before the season kicked off, and one of the things that we touched on with Northwestern was we didn't think they would get like 1, maybe 2 wins all year was what we thought they would be capable of. They have well exceeded what we thought. Now, at times when they played actual teams, I'm going to tell you right now, that offense looked god-awful.
Yeah. The one thing with Northwestern, you're not wrong, Christian, either, is, after they lost to Nebraska, they turned around and beat a Maryland team that I was like, man, okay, and then they turned around, lost to Iowa 10-7. And then they've beaten Wisconsin, they've beaten Purdue. Now they follow up with Illinois next week. Yeah, Northwestern might get 7 wins this year. That's crazy to me. I did not see that coming. Like you said, I think I had them pegged with 2 wins this year. Hats off to Northwestern this year, man. I know they get propped up by the Big Ten West, but Northwestern I thought was probably going to be one of the worst, Power 5 schools in the country. I was sadly mistaken.
Chris, would it shock you if they got 8 wins this year?
Yes. Holy shit. Yes.
I mean, because they play Illinois next week.
Yeah. They could beat Illinois and they could win a bowl game. Northwest. Yeah, man, wouldn't that have been crazy? Northwestern 8 wins this season. Hot take. Holy shit.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, because I'm trying to think here. No, yeah. I was trying to think. I was like, wait a minute, because I know Northwestern there for a minute. They were tied, right, for second.
They were.
But
Iowa
won, so that did it. I was getting excited there for a minute. Looking ahead at some of these other games, I mean, App State finally beat James Madison in overtime.
That
26-23.
Crazy game because James Madison was undefeated. The big thing this week, they since they joined D1, you're not eligible for a bowl game or a conference title game or anything like that in your first 2 years. Then they went out and shit the bed against App State yesterday. That was a crazy ending to that game, though.
Yeah, it definitely was. Do you think if they wouldn't have been, obviously I think they should have been vocal about it, but do you think if they weren't as vocal, they didn't get all that media attention and that wasn't a distraction for them maybe coming into this week, they would have beat App State?
I kind of think so, just being a younger school like that. I mean, there was a lot of attention on them. They were throwing a fit, to the NCAA, why they wouldn't let him, try to make one of those New Year's Six bowls or something like that if they end up winning a conference. And you just don't need distractions. You know what I mean, Christian? You just don't. And App State's not a bad football team either, by the way. They're not. I think that game was supposed to be close, but yeah, just the way it ended, it was pretty crazy. So.
I want to point something out here. West Virginia beating the brakes off Cincinnati. Chris, if you're West Virginia, there's a name that's going to keep being surfaced out there. There's a couple of coaches out there from West Virginia. Some guy named Nick Saban and another guy named Jimbo Fisher. I want to throw this out there. If you're West Virginia, Neil Brown has been on the hot seat for the last 2 or 3 years at West Virginia, and he always seems to do just enough to be able to keep his job. With Jimbo being open and available, if you're West Virginia, would you entertain the fact of maybe bringing in Jimbo Fisher?
I think it'd be a good fit since he's from there, but could they pay him the amount of money Jimbo Fisher would probably want?
Well, I don't think that's going to be an issue.
No, I mean, he's getting paid a ton right now, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Would he, I guess, also, would he want to go to West Virginia and coach in the Big 12? Now, I think that would be good for his career personally, but that's an interesting take, though. It's a very interesting take, but would you say Neil Brown's done a decent enough job this year? Because he was on probably the hottest of hot seats to start the season.
I think a place like West Virginia would be perfect for Jimbo because, look, the knock on Jimbo, he can recruit, but he can't really get the results with him right now. Right? 100%. So who's going to hire him? You know what I mean? Like, would Clemson hire? Like, let's say Dabo jumped ship and went to Texas A&M. They back the Brink trucks up. They offer him like $100 million, something crazy, and they go get Dabo. Clemson want him? I don't think they would.
I think the Clemson fan base would take him.
To me, West Virginia makes the most logical sense. I think him and Saban have butted heads too much for him to go try to do the old, on-field assistant or analyst role at Alabama.
Yeah, no, him and Saban don't like each other. Would you? I think what he'll do is sit out a year do the Urban Meyer thing, or whatever, like most coaches do, sit out a year and kind of see what's available. Although I'm not disagreeing with this, very interesting take that West Virginia maybe would be interested in him going forward. I get that. I get that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see for sure. Clemson would love Dan Mullen. I think everybody, Gator Swag, according to you, would hire Dan Mullen. I think if it was up to you, Georgia would go out and hire him tomorrow over Kirby Smart.
Dan Mullen. Oh, my God.
Every time he says this, I keep thinking, oh, my God, did Dan Mullen really get hired by Syracuse? And I'm like, no, he's just saying it. Dan Mullen's going to end up like Chuck Norris, I feel like. You know what I mean? He's just going to be one of those guys that's like, he's everywhere.
Yeah, no, he sure seems to be.
Oh, man. Duke losing to Virginia. Now, obviously, Riley Leonard didn't play in that game. But Virginia, down the stretch there, man, doing some good stuff.
Yeah, kind of coming out of nowhere. ACC is the Big 12 reincarnated, though. Tech lost yesterday to NC State. Tech a couple weeks ago was in the running for second place in the ACC at one point. Just weird stuff going on. Duke just fell off the map. I keep hearing, I know you keep laughing at me. I brought this up last week about the Texas A&M job. I know Mike Elko, man. I don't think he's going to be at Duke next year. He's going to be somewhere. I know a lot of people at A&M were talking about him again. I don't know if it's going to happen. I like Mike Elko. I think he's a really good defensive coach, 100%. But I don't know. His name's getting thrown around a lot out there. I wanted to mention that.
Here's the thing. I personally think Texas A&M is going to go in the direction of an offensive-minded guy.
Okay.
My personal thoughts with it. The defense has been pretty good over the last couple of years. Their problem's been on offense, though.
Oh, 100%. I think that whole Bobby Petrino thing didn't work either. Play calling wise. That guy's a stooge. I mean, me and you called that right away, didn't we?
I hate it that Bobby Petrino failed to, I'll be honest though, if I can say this, because we were touching on it. It was Texas A&M was really a weird team this year, right? Against Miami, defense just shit the bed.
Yeah. Yep.
Against arguably at that point a Miami team that they really had no business shitting the bed against in hindsight. Yeah. If your defense is that good, right? The other thing that is really weird to me, you turn around a couple weeks later and you go play Tennessee on the road at Knoxville, and it's a tough environment, but the offense just lackadaisical, I felt like, in that game.
Yeah. I don't know what A&M does, but I guess I'll touch on Duke here real quickly. Yeah, just kind of a tale of two seasons for Duke this year. Started off hot. Without Riley Leonard, though, man, it shows. Duke is just a different team without him. He does so much for that team. It's kind of like Max Duggan last year for TCU, right? Just one of those types of players, tough kid, hell of a leader. And I just think Duke it's Duke. I mean, at the end of the day, I hate saying that, but they're Duke.
Well, basketball season already started, so that's good.
Yes, correct.
Air Force loses to UNLV. So that's kind of a shocker there. Air Force was
really hot.
They were doing the thing, man. Then they ran into the Army, and
they end up getting beat by Hawaii. I believe it was last week. Hawaii is a triple option since like the 40s. And Hawaii came in there, beat them. If I'm not mistaken, if you click on Air Force, I'm pretty sure they got beat by Hawaii a couple weeks ago, and they were favored by like 20, something like that. It was some crazy. I just remember this on the betting.
It was a weekday game, wasn't it?
I don't think it was. It was a late Saturday night late game, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to click on this and see if I can find that. But yeah. Anyway, I don't know what happened to Air Force. They started off like 7-8. They got rated in the top 25 for the first time in like forever. And then your boys Army went in there and beat them. And then holy shit. So Christian, they lost to Hawaii last week, 27-13. A bad Hawaii team, might I add.
Well, it's tough out here for the Air Force. If you were to pick a service to go into, I would recommend Air Force. But yeah,
that's a tough one.
UCLA Southern Cal. I look. This was a weird game because of all the storylines playing into that one. Yes. You had Caleb Williams. I don't think I'd realized this. USC, since they'd played super early in the season, this was their last regular season game. This is potentially the last time we're going to see Caleb Williams in college. here. Chip Kelly, a lot of rumors had started surfacing that he was going to be fired depending on the result of this game. Wasn't really a particularly close game at a certain point. UCLA pulled away and put the thing on USC. I think, again, and I've said this, Chris, UCLA would be absolutely stupid for, if they fire Chip Kelly. Now, that doesn't mean that there's something underlying that we don't know yet that hasn't come to light that might have happened. But I also think that, there is parts of me that hopes UCLA fires him because that would be a terrible decision for them.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I said that last week when you brought that up to me. That'd be the dumbest thing UCLA would do. Who are they going to go get better than Chip Kelly? And if you do let him go, somebody's going to get a really good coach at Chip Kelly, especially a good college coach. So there might be some stuff under the table that we don't know about, but I'm just saying on the other end of it, I think that was Lincoln Riley's last game coaching too, other than maybe the bowl game if Southern Cal's got 6 wins, which I think they do. It seems like they've lost a lot in a row here. I still think Lincoln Riley's going to the NFL. That's just my take on it.
Really?
I really do.
We'll see. I think you think the Bears might try to come get him?
Yes, I will say the team out west, though, the Raiders. And they need a quarterback, and guess who's in this quarterback draft class?
Caleb Williams. But you think the Raiders are going to be able to pull off enough to go out there and get him?
I think so. The Raiders are pretty bad right now. There's a lot of good quarterbacks in this draft. They got some pieces to move around to try to move up in the draft if they could. You know my thoughts about Lincoln Riley. I said this about when he was at Oklahoma. I think he's a stooge. I think he's kind of a fraud. I think he's way, way overrated as a head coach. I think he's a really good offensive mind. There's a lot of guys that are really good offensive minds, though. But he doesn't believe in playing coaching any sort of defense or anything philosophy-wise. And it shows, man. I mean, USC was a lot of people, majority of people had them in the playoffs this year. Christian, they got, 4 losses now?
Yeah, there was, dare I say, some people that said USC was going to win the national championship.
Yeah.
And,
And it's not like they don't have fucking talent over there, Christian.
No, they have 5 losses, Chris. My bad. They're 7-5.
Holy shit.
7-5. And potentially, you assume, I don't know who they're going to play in a bowl game, but they could have 6 losses.
Jesus. I just, my thoughts about Lincoln Riley. I've never been sold on that guy. Fraud.
TBOW, I think is what they say about him. A bitch out west.
That's the
Oklahoma. As the Oklahoma man says here. TCU beating the dog shit out of Baylor. Good for them. The Horned Frogs trying to salvage their season here.
If you want a feel-good story any week, if you're down, just play Baylor. That's all you got to do.
Hey, what about that? Dave Aranda at one point, Chris, was, and I know a lot of it happened. Their quarterback got hurt, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what about Dave Aranda? Was one of the hottest names on the coaching market there for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden, wow.
Yeah, I might have been wrong about him because I thought he was going to be a good coach, good fit there. I might be wrong about him. Baylor's terrible. I mean, yes, you could throw the injuries in there, but my God, it's the Big 12. The Big 12, you can beat anybody any given week. Just ask BYU, ask West Virginia, ask some of those schools. Baylor's
3-8.
Oh, God.
3-8 this year, Chris. I mean, it's rough out there. If they don't get it turned around quick, Dave Aranda will probably end up. A lot of people were saying that he could be the next Bama coach, I think, at one point. Yeah, if Saban were to retire.
Yeah, he was talked about pretty highly. You're right.
He might be at Bama, just not as a head football coach or a coordinator. Sooner rather than later. Yeah. One of those analysts there.
Yeah, there you go.
I want to skip right down to the game here. New Mexico State, Auburn, Chris. What happened to the Auburn man?
I was just looking at the stats. When I saw the score, I texted you yesterday. There was 4 minutes to go. They were down by 14. I couldn't believe it. Now, I will say this. New Mexico State, I think, they're 8-3 now. But my God, Jordan Hare, and you lose to a team in New Mexico State. They had 67 rushing yards. Peyton Thorne had thrown the ball for like 120 yards. What is wrong with Auburn? Were they just looking that much forward ahead to Alabama this week? How do you lose this game? Auburn dismantled Arkansas last week, I believe.
Yeah.
What the hell happened here, Christian? I mean, I got to stick it to Tigers fans because we caught a lot of shit from them before this season started, man. And I got like one of these for them. I mean, this is terrible. You can't be losing a game like this. And Hugh Freeze, Christian, talk to me about that dipshit. I mean, my God.
Well, here's the thing. They decided, hey, this is not Auburn, Florida, certain teams like that. They are not a patient fan base, nor should they be.
No.
They both won national titles, in the last 20 years. So I think anytime you do that, like you're not going to tolerate mediocrity. I'll put it that way, right? So Hugh Freeze, we knew it was going to take him a while, right? And we said, hey, look, you're getting a guy in Peyton Thorne who is a middle-of-the-road Big Ten quarterback to come in to one of the toughest conferences in college football and play football week in, week out. Now, ironically, they didn't even lose to a team from the SEC. They lost to New Mexico State here. I can just put, and what I texted you back was, if Auburn keeps doing shit like this, Hugh Freeze will be fired halfway through next year.
Yeah, you can't tell me, Auburn, man, and if you're watching this, please grab your keyboard, let me know. This can't be acceptable, especially at home. 10 points?
We knew the offense was bad, but I don't think we realized it was that bad. They made LSU's defense look like a reincarnation of the '85 Bears. We know how bad LSU's defense is.
Jesus, man. I would be, if I was an Auburn fan right now, I'm on suicide watch. Like, I couldn't believe this. And 31-10 to New Mexico State. Wow.
It's tough out here, Chris. It is tough out here. Moving ahead a little bit here. Hey, Cal beat Stanford there. Good for them. Bad for the Stanford man there. Arkansas beat the dog shit out of FIU, 44-20. Might have been the thing that needed to save Sam Pittman's job. Kentucky and South Carolina.
We said it. Remember? We said it yesterday. We said, hey, South Carolina might win this game. Kentucky is falling off the map, Christian, after starting, 6-0? I mean, God, I don't even know if they've won a game since then. I mean, since the ass whooping they took from Georgia, man, it's been tough for Kentucky, dude. Devin Leary was definitely not the answer there. I will say that.
No, he was not. South Carolina also, it wasn't, to me, it wasn't an overly impressive game. It's not, to me, I don't look at this and I say, oh, wow, 17-14. The defenses really were on display. I think it was just two teams that are not very good on offense, Chris.
I would agree. South Carolina's defense has been pretty shitty this year, but boy, Kentucky, I don't know. This is a Kentucky team that just dismantled Florida, a month and a half ago. I don't know what's going on with Stoops. And I guess South Carolina, I'm assuming they're keeping Beamer. Not that I thought he probably was on the hot seat, but they've won a couple games here last, couple weeks. I think they beat Vandy last week or whatever. SEC's the SEC at the bottom, but I don't know, man. Like I said, this one didn't. Whoops, excuse me. I didn't mean to put that on there, but didn't shock me that South Carolina won this game, just the way Kentucky's been playing lately.
No, you're all good. I mean, listen, that's the exact reaction I had to watching the game, and not watching it, but looking at the final score of this game. LOL, LOL, indeed, Chris. Here's the thing. I think ultimately, and Gator Swag brings up a good point. This is what I wanted to say. Look. If I'm Mark Stoops, what more am I going to do here at Kentucky? I feel like I've squeezed all the juice I'm going to get out of the oranges here. And out of this program, so to say. There's some openings coming up. Let's reset it. Let's maybe go to, I don't know about Michigan State. I mean, maybe Michigan State, he'd probably be in a better spot there at Michigan State. I feel like that to me, that could be a good fit. Mark Stoops to Michigan State, that'd be a good fit.
They would definitely get him. You remember, what was it, after the Georgia game, he said something about why Georgia's so much better than him. He's like, well, they got better players. We need to pay players more. The NIL deals, what he's basically was getting to. Let's be honest. Kentucky's a basketball school. They have been forever, and they always will be. I don't care what anybody says. He's done some good things there. I like Stoops as a head coach. He coaches very similar to Kirby Smart as far as the play style, right? They want to go smash mouth, run the football, play good defense. Problem is, Kentucky's they're outmatched talent-wise most of the time in the SEC. Sometimes they overachieve and beat some teams you wouldn't think they'd beat, but Michigan State would not be a bad fit. Michigan State is willing to do anything to get wins in their football program. Michigan State, 10 years ago was an 8-9 win team every year. We all know what happened there with Mel Tucker and all that crap, but they paid him an egregious amount of money. Michigan State job to me is very interesting. I think that's a good job personally, if I'm a head coach.
Yeah, I would. Normally, I think the Urban Meyer train was taking a lot of steam there. I think the Texas A&M job coming open might have put a little bit of some water on that fire.
Agreed.
Me personally thinking, right? Because again, we touched on that whole thing. we're talking about Kentucky or Mark Stoops. Makes sense. I would say at this point, get out of the conference.
Yeah.
He's not going to win the SEC East. He hasn't done it since he's been at Kentucky. He's put some 8-9 win seasons together. But yeah, I think that, to me, I'm just looking at that and I'm like, okay, so Bama's still Bama, Georgia's still Georgia, Tennessee's in a better spot. There's so many good teams out there. You got the Lane Train over at Ole Miss, and who knows whether he even stays at Ole Miss or not either.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see how all this is going to shake out. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I think that, and I also think that, they're getting Oklahoma and Texas in there next year. Those two recruit a lot better than Kentucky. It's just Kentucky to me is going to kind of fall to the wayside. I hate to say that because I like the Wildcats. I like Stoops, but yeah.
I agree. Mike says, personally, he thinks Deion ends up at Texas A&M. I don't think so. I think Deion will stay. I think Deion's going to stay at Colorado for his sons. Because, here's the thing. They can't transfer again, right? I mean, I think the NCAA is going to start cracking down on that a little bit more, depending. I don't think he goes to Texas A&M. I think in a couple years when his kids get out and Travis Hunter gets out, I think he's going to probably move. But till then, no,
I don't think there's a chance. I think A&M is their boosters. I think can see through Deion. I don't think Deion's a head coach. I really don't. I don't think he has a fucking clue what he's doing. And I think it's all just to get his kid to the NFL and all that. Did you know that Shedeur Sanders has never played for another coach ever in his life growing up? I mean, it's very evident to me what's going on. I think A&M wants to win, and Deion Sanders, to me, stands no chance in the SEC with the talent and the teams down there. So Colorado can't even give 5 wins this year. I don't see that happening at all at Texas A&M. I think they're too smart for that.
Well, though, they're going to be propped up too. Like they're going to get. Here's the thing, right? They're going to get propped up going to the Big 12 next year. And, as far as the Shedeur Sanders things, I did not realize that. It makes sense if you think about it. Just think of what the kid could do with some different coaching. I'm not saying Deion's not a good coach. I'm not saying that because we touched on it, nobody was going to go into Colorado and win 7-8 games this year. That just wasn't going to happen. But, yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see what happens, when Shedeur gets to the NFL, gets some different coaching, and, we might even see a better quarterback yet.
I think he'll be much better. I do. I truly do. He's definitely talented, but Colorado's a circus to me. That whole thing is. And I think he's going to leave them high and dry here in a couple of years, and Colorado will go right back to where they were. I hate to say that for the true Buffalo fans out there, but that's just truly what I think.
Nebraska, Wisconsin.
I'm going to let you start, Christian, because I got a little bit of a rant, and I'll let you go first.
Well, I thought I was going to be proven right. I had made the statement before we started, when we were talking yesterday about some of the matchups. I said, hey, I think Chubba Purdy's going to come in, and we're going to come into that game saying, why the hell has this kid not been playing? Why the hell was he not the answer? And for the first 2 drives, the first quarter, I looked like a genius. And then the rest of the game, I don't know what happened, if I can be honest with you. I'm going to say this. Coaching decisions down the stretch there, I think, cost the Cornhuskers in this game because with about 1:30 left to go in the game, Nebraska had the ball inside of Wisconsin's 30-yard line. They had 3 timeouts. They were ahead on the chains. They were driving. Any other team in the country that's 5-5 would go for the win in that situation. Nebraska decided to play very, very, very conservatively, kick a field goal, and go into overtime on the road against one of the better teams over the last 10 years, I would say. 20 years in the Big Ten East, and that was Wisconsin. Now, this isn't the same Wisconsin team, obviously, that was competing for Big Ten East championships over the last couple of decades and such, but still, mind-boggling decision to me. I don't know why they decided to do that. It just seemed like a very curious thing to me. It seemed like a team that had no confidence at that point. Chris, I'll let you touch on it a little bit more, though.
No, you actually brought up the same exact points I wanted to bring up. You talked about right before overtime there. I was pissed. The announcers were even talking about like, shit, you got 3 timeouts here. You got 1.5 minutes. Go for this thing, right? I mean, to me, in my mind, Nebraska has nothing to lose. We haven't beaten Wisconsin in 10 fucking years. Let's go for the jugular. Let's just go for the dub and get out of there. You never want to play overtime, by the way, at somebody else's place. The crowd factors into it then. It's loud. You're playing down inside the 20s. That's just how that usually works. The home team usually wins. Then we get into overtime, right? My dad texts me. He goes, man, this is getting sketchy here. I said, yeah, if we win the coin toss, you want to play, defer, play defense first. So you know what you have to do offensively, whether that's score a touchdown or whether that's kick a field goal. Wisconsin, ballsy decision by Luke Fickell there on 4th and goal or 4th and 2. They got down to the 4-yard line there. He goes for it. They get it. Obviously punch it in. So Nebraska does have to obviously turn around, score a touchdown. The play calling on that overtime drive, dude, I was irate. The slip screen stupid pass, the nonchalant couple handoffs that went nowhere, and then 2 penalties, Christian? I mean, and I'm not sitting here, I'm not saying fire rule. I'm not saying any of that shit. I was just disappointed in the play calling, whether that's Satterfield or who made those decisions there at the end. And that wide receiver screen shit needs to stop. It doesn't work at Nebraska. We don't have the players to do that. We don't have an accurate enough quarterback to throw those balls like the Georgias of the world and Michigan and all these other teams. God, that shit drives me nuts, Christian. It just looked like we were playing the last minute and a half of that game when you brought up, not being aggressive. We were playing not to lose. I talked to you about this, Christian, 2 weeks ago on the phone about Nebraska sometimes. And it's like, play to fucking win, not playing to lose. There's a big difference, by the way. And it just looked like we got conservative. We got scared. And I actually thought Nebraska was the better football team in this game. I really did. I thought Chubba Purdy played well. There's some things that he needs to work on. I do think he's a better athlete by far. He can run. He's relatively quick. Threw some decent balls. We did stretch the ball down the field in this game. Defense, I do have a couple question marks, by the way. They got 8 up in the second half with Tanner Mordecai on the ground a couple times, had some big runs. I don't know why we didn't double what the hell's their slot guy at all in the second half. I was pretty pissed. That was the only guy they kept throwing the ball to. He had about 15 targets. He got banged up. They brought him in, made a couple more big catches during the game. So I'm a little worried about Nebraska's defense there, especially as far as scheme goes. When you got one guy hot at wide receiver, you got to double him, right? I mean, you just got to. The guy was torching us. But overall, man, very disappointed. We needed this win. I know Iowa had won the game before the game started. Christian and I were talking about that, but we need to get bowl eligible here, man. And we dropped 3 in a row now, Christian.
Yeah, I mean, been sitting on 5 and whatever for almost the better part of the last month. So I would say, Wisconsin, it meant something for them now. They are bowl eligible. Tanner Mordecai came in there, and I thought he looked all right in that game. I mean, again, there were certain things that you wish you would see a little bit more clearly here. I think Luke Fickell, here's the thing, Chris, and we touch on it all the time, right? Like Louisville, nobody really had Louisville really doing jack shit this year.
No. And
nor should they have. But you see what happens when you get a guy like Jeff Brom, who won the Big Ten East last year, and they got boat raced in some of those games. Yeah. Look at the job Jeff Brom has done in 1 year out there at Louisville. To me, I saw Nebraska as that. You know what I mean? That's what I saw Nebraska coming into the season as, was their schedule was very favorable. And the crazy part of it is Chris, they had every opportunity to do it against Michigan State, against Maryland, against some of these teams that we're sitting here saying, they should have done it. And Minnesota, whatever have you, Colorado, that wouldn't have impacted this as much. But the problem I have is Tony White, if he leaves, which very well could leave at the end of this year. He's going to be a guy that's going to be floated around out at a lot of different schools and a lot of different programs. There's a lot of openings out there now. But if Tony White leaves and the defense regresses, which I actually think they're going to take a step back next year, the offense has got to take massive steps forward to carry the team. Massive steps forward. I'm looking ahead at their schedule for next year, and I don't do this often, but I know for y'all's sake, I like talking about Nebraska. Start the year off at UTEP, or at home against UTEP. That should be an easy win. You play Colorado at home. Now listen, I think Colorado, one of the things we're going to learn about Colorado is early in the year, they're a different team than they are later in the year. Just because I think they're a good team. They're not a deep team. They're a good team, not a deep team. So let's say, again, you could easily start the season off 2-1, right? Then you play Illinois, at Purdue, Rutgers, at Indiana, at Ohio State. And by the way, the schedule for Nebraska next year is extremely backloaded, whereas this year I think it was really front-loaded. You're playing at Indiana. You just, where do you want to start this at? I mean, they play at Ohio State, UCLA, at USC, Wisconsin, at Iowa. None of those are going to be easy wins at all.
Yeah. Yeah. To jump in here, you said it. Mike said it. I mean, they're going to have to take major steps offensively. Just to give you guys some clarity, I looked this up last night where Nebraska's at offensively this season. They average 18.7 points per game. That's 12th worst in the country. There's 133 D1 schools out there, and we're a Power 5 school in the Big Ten Conference, and there's only Iowa's actually just a little bit worse than us, which is ironic. They're winning the West. But these numbers, if you look at it, it's abysmal. It's terrible. If you can't score more than 24 points a game in today's college football, there's a problem. I mean, especially with the talent level that Nebraska does get in, they usually have a top 30 recruiting class year in, year out. This has got to change. I mean, 17 points again. They brought it up on air. If you guys watched the game last night, the announcers even said, like, man, Nebraska really struggles putting points up. And they named all their losses this year, 10 against Minnesota, 17 against Michigan State. I mean, none of these teams are world beaters. It's sad. I mean, we put 14 up on a bad Colorado team who's got one of the worst defenses in the country. Christian, you're right. I don't know what, I know what needs to happen. And you're right about Tony White. He might not be here next year. And even if he is, with the slew of teams that we're getting in the Big Ten next year, a la Oregon, UCLA, all those teams, we're going to have to score some more points. Our defense can't be just carrying us 75% of a game, And I'm truly worried about it, dude. I am. And they got to get this thing figured out offensively, dude. Some of it's the play calling. I haven't talked about it much this year, but boy, it showed last night the final couple drives there, like you used the word conservative. I mean, that's about spot on, man. And it's got to change, man, because it's only going to get harder. This was a year, you said it best, Nebraska could have won 7, 8, 9 games this year with the schedule and the defense that they have. And if you can't score more than 20 points, bro, come on.
Yeah, I agree with it. Here's my other take on this, just long-term looking at Nebraska, and that is, look, with Frost, it was a whole thing about he played in the 90s with you guys, right? And I think that's why he got the benefit of the doubt and why, Alberts gave him 5 years or 4 years, whatever it was, 4 or 5 years there. With Matt Rule, if he doesn't get you guys to a bowl game next year, I think the 2025 schedule gets really tough for you guys. It's so hard anymore to predict this stuff because all the transfer portal, everything like that. It's really hard to kind of see what's going to happen. Rule probably won't make it through his third year if that doesn't get fixed, because 3 wins next year if nothing changes. Even if you change stuff, what's going to be? That's the thing. It takes time in college football. It still takes time to get these things massively improved, because what quarterback are you going to get? You know what I mean? What quarterback are you going to get there? If I'm a transfer quarterback, right, and I'm worth my salt, I don't think the quarterbacks they had were bad. Like, yeah, Jeff Sims turns it over at an unprecedented rate. Heinrich Haarberg can't throw the football. And Chubba Purdy, I think, was banged up and kind of got thrown in there and whatever you make it. I think Purdy, he's only a sophomore. I think he's the future of the program, if you want me to look at it that way. What other quarterback are you going to get that's going to fix it? The offensive line still has to play better. The receivers have to take a massive step forward. You have to get if they don't fire Satterfield, you're going to have to, because here's the thing. Satterfield's never had an offense better than like 71st in the country.
That's, yeah. Ugh. Yeah, I know. That's a very interesting stat. You know what I mean? They ran him out of South Carolina last year. I mean, yeah, you're not wrong. He's getting this. Like I said, Rule's going to have to do his best recruiting, his best coaching this coming year.
Yeah.
I think he kind of figured out what the Big Ten is about. There are some good things I like about Rule. I mentioned him yesterday. I think the team plays incredibly hard. That's something I couldn't say under Scott Frost and Mike Riley before that. He's a good dude. I know he wants to win. I can honestly say that just watching his press conferences and stuff. But man, dude, here's the difference. And I talk about this a lot. I'll use Georgia for an example. Georgia has gotten better, Christian, wouldn't you say, week in and week out throughout the season as a team?
Yeah.
That's the sign of a great team. That's what I wanted from Nebraska this year. I don't know if Nebraska is any better than when they played Minnesota week 1. It's kind of the same thing. And it's scary to me because I wanted to take a few more leaps forward this year at the end of the season to come into next year and go, okay, we got some stuff established. We kind of know what we are. We have an identity, right? We're not worried about getting rid of coordinators because they've all done fairly well. Now we can go out and recruit the kids that we want to recruit. We can get bowl eligible and possibly win a bowl game. Now, those things are still on the table if we beat Iowa. But right now, me personally, from what I've seen the last 3 weeks, I am not – I couldn't bet on Nebraska to beat Iowa right now if somebody gave me free money to do so. I don't see it happening, Christian. I really, truly don't. Iowa could be down in a letdown spot here because they already clinched. But my point is, going into this offseason, dude, you said it best, right? The pass blocking's got to improve. We got to get some wide receivers that can create some space and get open. You're going to have to find a quarterback that can put the ball out there. We talk about it week in and week out, and I'll make this quick. There's a lot of elite college quarterbacks out there right now this year, especially. A lot of them are going to the NFL. But you look at any good team, Christian, any good team, they all have a guy that can push the ball down the field and not turn it over. Any good team. Look at Carson Beck as the perfect example. Sat on the bench, got beat out by Stetson Bennett last year. Look at what he's done this year. That kid has grown, and he can throw the football. And, you know, a lot of people thought he was going to be a joke maybe this year, right? There was a lot of talk. He was in a quarterback battle all preseason, right? With Vandergriff and all those guys, and Kirby made the decision. I guess my point is that we need to start developing some players, quarterbacks in particular here at Nebraska. It's been an ongoing problem. And I'm not blaming Purdy. I know he's been banged up. I thought he had some nice runs. Christian, you said it best. We get up to a 14-0 lead yesterday. And I was thinking to myself, like, damn, this kid continues to play like this, Nebraska's going to win this game easily.
Oh, yeah.
Then you see what happens. I'll kick it back.
Well, I was going to say, I think I was right, though. I think ultimately I was right. I think Purdy's the guy. I think
I agree.
He showed me flashes, and I think the game script changed drastically, and I think that's ultimately what put the blanket on that fire. How do you develop a quarterback with no quarterback coach? Well, you have a good offensive coordinator. You have a really good offensive line coach.
Who's that fall on? Head coach, right? I mean, if that's
falls on the head coach.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I would say those are the two guys right there. I mean, here's the thing. I said this. I think I pretty much said this from week one, right, against Minnesota. You had all offseason. How are you just now figuring out that, you know, how does Jeff Sims in the goal line there not understand where to throw the ball? And then we saw it last week where the quarterback still had no idea where to go to on the reads and are making bad decisions and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And to me, I just look at it as I think it's just ineptness, honestly. Now, you threw a name out there that I actually had forgotten about. Wouldn't that be something? You guys keep that pipeline going here and go out and get a guy like Brock Vandergriff.
I'm not joking when I say this. There's a kid down at Texas in Malik Murphy. If Quinn Ewers doesn't leave, I don't give a fuck what I got to pay him. There's some guys out there that are backups on some teams this year that are very good. And I would go out and I would take the Bean kid from Kansas because Daniels is coming back. I'm serious. I would do whatever I had to. And Rule wants, there's no doubt, there's a reason why Casey Thompson's gone. Rule wants a dual threat quarterback, right? There's a lot of those guys out there. Nebraska's not afraid of NIL money. That's for damn sure. Go out and get somebody that can throw the ball consistently and is mobile. And you made a really good point, Christian, that we need to talk about here for a second. Reads. The amount of Nebraska still leads the country in turnovers currently. This has been an ongoing problem. Not just Rule. This was under Frost, Riley. It's ineptness. I don't know what the hell they're doing when it comes to teaching these kids how to see a defense. I mean, football's being played at the peewee level, bro. And there's high school kids out there that can read defenses. This isn't rocket science. Like I said, Purdy should have been playing. That's another question we talked about was, why did it take this long for Purdy? Now everybody's telling me it was injuries all season. Is that really true? Because he was third string.
Yeah, because, I mean, he played look, I think they passed it off as injuries. He probably had something lingering, but he probably could have played. I mean, he played against Colorado.
That's my point. He played a couple other games too, came in for a little bit too in a few other games, I think.
I think it's just, look, I think Purdy's a better thrower of the football than Harburg. Sims, I think, might still be the best thrower of the football on the team, but he can't not turn the ball over. So,
yeah.
Jeff is still injured, has to have surgery end of this year.
And that's fine, but then, like, but obviously he's good enough to play, though. Otherwise, he would have just had the surgery, right?
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, I'm always one of those guys where look, everything's a business. I mean, it's not like this. It's not like, hey, this is Florida State or Georgia or something like that. Like there was several points of the year. Just go get the damn surgery. If you're that injured, go get surgery. I mean, what's the best case scenario? Like this happens here, both the guys get hurt, and you have to play at the end of the year on a team that's fighting for bowl eligibility.
Oh, I agree. I mean, that's what I said. I not there. Sorry to cut you off, Christian, but you're exactly right. That's where I was going to get to too. It's like if you're hurt, then go have the surgery. You must not be hurt that bad if he's still playing. If they're still throwing him out there. I mean, they threw him out there last week on the last drive of the game. If they would have started him last week against Maryland, we would have won. But again, this is where I don't understand what's going on coaching wise, and that's where I have some questions about Rhule and kind of what's going on there. I really am. You said it best. If he's so damn injured, then go get your surgery on a team that's only got 5 wins. What's it matter?
Yeah. I mean, he must not have been that bad because it was a groin injury, right?
Yes.
So I guess that groin really affected him on that 75-yard touchdown run, right?
God, he looked great running that, by the way, man. He looked really fast. He looked quick. Again, I think he's only a sophomore too, so he's going to be back next year. I believe he's a sophomore. I think. Don't quote me on that, but
we'll touch on this. Georgia Tech, Syracuse. Say, man, Georgia Tech, Brent Key doing some good things over there.
Yeah. What is Georgia Tech got 6 wins yet?
I think they have, dude.
Jesus, Georgia Tech's better than Nebraska. Holy shit. Isn't like
Take
Georgia
a look
Tech
here.
like a super smart school, like engineering school?
6-5. Oh god, yeah, dude. They're the Harvard to the South. I feel like everybody says that though.
I hear that.
Well, Vanderbilt's the Harvard of the South. You got Emory University's a Harvard of the South. Like I think every school could claim that if you want to. So it's like, what are we doing?
They are
but
Georgia 6-5, man. They're 6-5.
6-5, dude. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah,
they could be 7-5. They're not going to be. They're going to be 6-6.
No, they're not beating
after this next week.
There's no way they're beating Georgia this week. I know. I mean, there's no way. I think Georgia Tech will probably score first, and then you guys will do what you guys been doing all year is just putting up 40 lately on everybody and blowing them off the field. But hats off to Georgia Tech this year. They're, like I said, I'm happy for them. I don't have any love for them really, but they did recruit me in high school, by the way. But hats off to Georgia Tech though. Like I said, 6-win season. I didn't see that coming this year. I did not.
I didn't see that coming either, but I guess it makes sense because you were in a wing T option offense that threw the ball up. Could have been Megatron 2.0 out there, dude. Jeez.
Yeah, Calvin Johnson was like a year below me, man. So yeah. Good old Calvin Johnson.
Chris Vaca and Calvin Johnson, dude. Just dynamic duo.
Calvin Johnson was the best college receiver I've ever seen. Man, God, he was good.
I'll say this, we'll get her ended up here, but the Florida State game, Gator Swag brings up a good point. It's going to be interesting. Battle of the backup quarterbacks, as we talked about. I think they said Graham Mertz's significant collarbone injury.
Is that what happened to him? Like I said, I did not catch that game. So
I thought that's what they said. I was reading something, I think, on Twitter about it. So they're just saying he's going to miss significant time. I thought it was a shoulder, collarbone, something like that. I know he had it kind of slinged up a little bit. So, but Max Brown, I mean, he came in, he played pretty well from what I saw in that game. I think it was a lot of people, and Seth, I think, was talking about it. Yeah, so it was the collarbone. But, Seth was talking about, hey, their defense, they're wanting to fire Austin Armstrong.
Yeah.
I don't think they should. I know it sounds crazy. I don't think they should because personally, I think for the most part of the year, he's done good. I think they just got really banged up and they're injured and they're having some young guys play, which I think long-term is good for them.
Yeah, no, I do. I think Florida, like I said, Florida's got a chance in this game without Jordan Travis. I think you're crazy not to think that. It is at the Swamp, right? We know Florida does play a hell of a lot better there at home. I want to see what the line is. They haven't came out with it yet. I really, truly want to see what the line is on this game because I think there's going to be a lot of people taking Florida in this one. I really do. Which kind of tells you that they have a shot. So, yeah, they don't have it out yet, but it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens. I do still think Florida State is probably the better team just with the talent they got, especially on the defensive side of the ball, a couple of their players and those wide receivers. Christian, I don't even know who the backup is of Florida State, though. It's some white kid they had back there last night. I didn't get that game wasn't on TV over here anyway, so I didn't get to see him play much. They showed a couple highlights. He looked okay, but that was against Northern Alabama.
North Alabama.
Or whatever. Yeah, North Alabama. So doesn't really show me much. But like I said, I think the Gators are going to have a shot here. It'd be huge if they pull off the upset because, then you guys are bowl bound.
Well, they got old Taint Roadmaker.
Oh, nice name. I like Joe Twister. All right.
Oh, dude, yeah. 7 o'clock at night, which means it's probably a 6 o'clock game for us. So it'll be an interesting game. According to ESPN, Florida State is 11.5 favorite.
Boy, that'll get bet down super quick. Super quick.
I agree. This to me, as much as weird as it is to say, because I know how we felt about Florida, I know all that stuff, but to me, Florida's got a shot in this one, dude.
I know. I think so. Like I said, with them playing at home here, this thing will get bet down within probably 8-7 points. I truly believe that. There'll be a lot of people on Florida in this one, just because Florida, like I said, Florida's kind of a up and down team this year. There's times where they look good, the defense comes to play, and then there's times where obviously we know what happened to Kentucky and Arkansas in some of those games. But I could see Florida's going to be hanging around in this one regardless. I can promise you that. Without Graham Mertz or with him, it doesn't matter. So and he's not playing, is he, Christian?
Who, Graham Mertz?
Yeah.
No.
He's done. Toast. Okay.
I'm pretty sure he is. I mean, that guy needs to sit out. That's a legitimate injury. I don't know surgery. Why? I mean, he's going to need some stuff done there. So yeah, he's definitely going to be out for that one. But I would say if he plays, then Jesus Christ.
I want to switch.
Tough number.
Yeah, I want to switch gears real quickly. Mike brought up a good point. We were not doing our prediction bet today. Who would you lean, Michigan or Ohio State right now today?
Ohio State.
Okay, you're going to lean Ohio State. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to lean Michigan strictly because it's at the big house. That's it. That's all I got.
I know. We touched on this all offseason. I mean, too, Chris. I think that's the other side of it here, where Ohio State to me they're playing defense, dude. I mean, they're playing defense really, really, really well. The other side of it is offensively, they don't scare you as much as they have in years past, but they can still put up points. And their offense they've got some pieces, dude. Now, the biggest question to me is offensive line play. When they play a team like Michigan, is that offensive line going to get railroaded? Because Michigan has a good defense too.
Oh, yeah.
Although you did touch on it and say Maryland was able to drive down the field at times at will on them.
They did. Now, I know, devil's advocate here, Ohio State's offense obviously isn't the electric elite offense as it has been in years past with C.J. Stroud and Justin Fields and those guys. But you're right. Their defense is much more improved. I think this game's going to be a low scoring, in the teens type of game probably. I'm not making my prediction yet, but I'm with you. Maryland did move the ball very, I don't want to say easily, but they did. A majority, they put some drives together against Michigan, which was kind of surprising. Now, people are going to tell me, hey, Michigan was looking ahead to Ohio State. It was at Maryland. I understand that. I get that after the big win over Penn State the week before. But, this will be one of the most interesting games, not of the season, but I'm going to say in a long time for this rivalry, Christian, because the whole cheating scandal thing, right? I think people are going to point back to 2023's Michigan-Ohio State game and kind of see what happens, right? I think there's a lot of implications on the line. I think both teams are obviously very good football teams. I think they're almost even, right? I mean, they're both good defensively. You said it. Offensively, they both like to run the football. This is going to be a good football game. I think this one's going to be remembered for a while, though. I truly do.
Oh, I agree with you, Chris. I'll show you this right here. What's that say?
They don't need to. That doesn't surprise me with Kirby Smart. You think he's celebrating 28 straight?
No, and I think that's got to be truly terrifying for everybody else, right?
Yeah. Like I said, what you guys are doing doesn't get enough publicity and hype. There's only been one team to ever three-peat in football, and that was back in the 30s with Minnesota. So, and that a lot of different football was played back then than what is today. What you guys are on pace for here is crazy, dude. 28 straight wins in today's era, dude. It's a lot of fucking wins. I don't know if Nebraska's got 28 wins in the last 10 seasons. So let's just, for context, it's crazy what you guys are doing.
Gator Swag brings up a good point. What's the top 5 look like on Tuesday?
I'll give you my top 5. Not in any real particular order. I'm going to put Georgia first. Obviously, I still think Georgia's the best team in the country right now. I will put Ohio State second. I will put Michigan, and I'm going to put Washington, and I'm going to put Florida State.
I agree with that in that order.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Washington did enough. They showed me enough in that game to say, hey, they're a top 4 team. Now, ultimately, we know how that goes. Chris, I'm going to make a bold prediction.
Yes,
right? You know, me and my bold predictions. My bold prediction is, as everything sits right now, chaos is going to ensue over the next 3 to 4 weeks.
I could see that. I mean, it happens most years. Crazy shit happens. I want to ask you a question. Oregon is, in my opinion, the best one-loss team in the country right now. I mean, they've looked just fucking elite. Alabama has been getting better and better week in and week out. If Oregon happens to beat Washington, you're taking Oregon goes, right? You got to put them in the playoff, one-loss Oregon team, because this is kind of weird because the ACC is still floating around Florida State. I know Jordan Travis out; they could go undefeated and get in. This is good. You know what I mean? Does the Pac-12 leave out both one-loss teams of Washington and Oregon if that scenario plays out and Florida State wins? And I think the loser of Ohio State, Michigan gets in. I do in that scenario as well, because one of those teams has to lose. You see what I'm saying here? There's somebody I think is going to get left out this year, and it's scary to me because it's like there's Oregon State, there's Washington potentially with one loss. Florida State might run the table, say they beat Louisville. Ohio State, Michigan got one loss. One of those teams does.
Yeah, see, here's what I think. Mike, by the way, this is still the four-team playoff for this year. Next year it goes to 12. But here's what I think, dude. This is just what I think is going to happen when I say pure chaos. I think Georgia could lose to Bama, right? In a perfect world, you know, you've got Georgia winning out, you've got Washington winning out, and then Florida State winning out. And then you take the winner of the Michigan-Ohio State game.
Okay. And
that's a perfect.
I forgot all about Texas too. Jesus.
Yeah.
They're still laying around too.
You've got Texas as well. But what happens if Washington State, for whatever reason, right? Because if there was a team that could beat Washington to end it off in that Apple Cup, it to me would be Washington State, because we know how dynamic they can be on offense at times, right? We've seen the good defense and the not so hot offense. You put Cam Ward back there, this could be the one game where they just wake up and just play really good and hope Michael Penix kind of self-imposes and they have an off game there, right, to end the season. What if they lose, or what if they lose to Oregon in the championship game, right? I mean, let me ask you this. If somebody's going to lose the Ohio State-Michigan game, we know that, right? So you're going to have one undefeated team in the regular season, right? You're going to have one undefeated team between those two, possibly. Because, you know, whoever wins that game, whether it's Ohio State or Michigan, they're not losing to Iowa.
No.
They're just not going to do it. So you're going to have one undefeated team there. But then you look at, okay, what if Georgia loses to Alabama? They're a one-loss team now. Bama's still a one-loss team who lost to Texas. Let's say Texas messes around and gets beat in their game, or even if they win out, they're still a one-loss team to Oklahoma, right? Washington loses to Oregon. You see where I'm going with this? Florida State, I'm not sold that they can't be a one-loss team after a couple weeks. You know, what if that? How do you then start to break that down?
I know there's a bazillion scenarios that could happen out of all this. You know, I'll give you my predictions right now, though. I think Georgia wins. I think they beat Alabama, so that knocks them out. That's just my personal opinion. I think Georgia's the best team in the country. They win. They go obviously go to the playoff. I think Washington plays Oregon in the Pac-12 title game. I think Oregon wins, so they still have one loss. Now, the Florida State LSU game is very interesting. If Florida State would happen to win that game, they're going in my book.
Yeah.
The winner of Michigan and Ohio State goes. So there's 3. Now I think you're left with a slew of one-loss teams in Washington and Texas. Say they win the Big 12, so they still only have one loss. Bama's out because they have 2. LSU, or not LSU, but Florida State I said Florida State would win that game, so they're obviously in. But you're right. That would come down to a one-loss team trying to get in between all those Washington and Florida State. And, you know, there's a lot of scenarios. You know, we could talk about this all day. I apologize for probably bringing it up, but Yeah, boy, it's going to get very interesting. Then again, how do you maybe in that scenario, by the way, throw out a one-loss Ohio State team or something like that because they're only lost to Michigan? So, wow, there's going to be a lot of one-loss teams this year, I think. And perfect scenario: Florida State runs the table, Georgia runs the table, Washington runs the table, so they're all 3 undefeated. Then Michigan, Ohio State goes undefeated. Then you just got 4 undefeated teams in there. But we know that's not going to happen, Christian.
Oh no.
That's too easy.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be pure chaos over the next couple of weeks, Chris. So,
yep.
But it's going to be must-see TV. That's for sure. You're going to want to keep it tuned here. We're going to be back at it again for you guys this week. So, yeah, you'll want to be there, be square. I'll kick it over to Chris to end this.
Obviously, thanks, guys. Appreciate the support today. If you haven't, please like the channel, subscribe, follow us more for some great picks from Christian and I. By the way, I hit 13 out of 14 yesterday. But yeah, let's keep it up. Oh, also make sure you get your fantasy football lineup set. Let's go.